What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of the Kanati Way podcast. We are back at my cabin here in upstate New York. We don't have a guest on the podcast this week, so it's just back to the OGs, Nate and I. And we figured what we want to talk about this week is frustrated hunting. Nate and I have both had a very, very frustrating hunting season so far. And I'm just going to let you dive right into it and talk about your season.
Yeah. This season has been a long one. It's been completely, I don't have a single deer. I don't have any deer.
Neither of us do.
Yeah, and I've been going out basically every day. Usually in the evenings, I go out. This time of year, I've been going out around 2 o'clock and hunt till sundown. I'm not even seeing much, man. And I feel like, I've got a lot to learn. This is my 3rd season, so I'm learning a lot. But I'm at a point where I feel like I'm doing everything right. And I'm not even seeing deer. I'm not really getting opportunities. And the couple times that I have had opportunities, they haven't panned out. There's only been a handful of opportunities I had, and I couldn't seal the deal. So I'm just getting to a point where it's like, it's just frustrating. It's been a long season and nothing really to show for it. I'm giving it my all, and I'm starting to feel it because we're almost at the end of the regular season now, and it's like, man, I want a deer bad. But.
Well, so as people know, you're pretty new to hunting. This is your 3rd hunting season. Yep. I've been going at it for, I'm 30 now. I've been going since I was 12. Deer hunting really at 14. So I'm going on this is my 16th deer season. So I guess like all I can really, my best way to give you advice with that is more so letting you know that like you're not alone with that. It's a very common thing. Mm-hmm. So like they'll say a lot whenever you see a youth hunter shoot a big buck, and a lot of big bucks get killed because now we have New York youth weekend in, what is it, the 2nd weekend of October now. The youth gets to go out. I think it's ages 14, 15 or something like that. Maybe even younger now. I'm not sure the regulations. And go with a rifle and get a shot at a deer before the woods get pressured. It's a really great opportunity for youth. I love it. Some people hate it. I'm all for it. But you always see people say whenever a youth hunter shoots a big buck, they're like, well, you're never going to beat that, something like that. So last year you had a phenomenal year.
Yeah.
Your 2nd year hunting, you got a great bow buck.
Yep.
And then you got a great gun buck, and you didn't put that much time into it last year.
Yeah, I mean, not like this year. I still put a fair amount of time into it, but not like this year where it's like every day. Yeah.
So what I mean by that is like you might be a little bit spoiled. Your expectations are set from last year, and now you're realizing what it is this year.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the times it's like this. Mm-hmm. So like I said, this is my 16th deer season in New York, and there's been multiple of them that I never got a deer. Mm-hmm. And we've discussed this. Like the only reason I haven't gotten a deer this year is because it's the first year that I'm really just set on one specific target deer. And you said the other day the difference, I'm frustrated for my own reasons. You're frustrated, but you said if you were me, at least I've had the opportunity to fill all my tags. You haven't had that opportunity yet. And it's definitely when you go through putting as much time in as you have, and you're not having success with it yet, that's when you start thinking like, oh, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing? What could I do different? You can do everything right, and they're still not have a shot at a deer or have the opportunity to come by you. And that's just hunting. That's why, a lot of people don't do it, because they're like, there was a guy last night, we were out at the bar last night, and one of my buddies came in and I shook his hand and said, how you doing? So you have any luck this year? And he's like, oh, I don't hunt. And I was like, you don't hunt? I don't know. I just took him as a hunter. He's like, no, why would I hunt? He's like, I just go to my freezer and pull a steak out. And I was like, fair, good point. I get that. I mean, that's not what I hunt for different reasons, obviously. I know you do too. But like, he has a point. Just go to the freezer and pull a steak out. A lot easier. Yeah. And we talked before, I believe we mentioned this on the last episode, all the money and the time and everything we put into hunting, that money going towards if you go to a farm and just buy half a cow, you'd be spending half the amount of money, getting double the amount, triple the amount of meat, be way, way easier. If you're just trying, you know, that's a lot more logical, really. Yeah. So we have a different reason behind it. But like I said, you can do everything right and it just doesn't pan out.
Yeah. And if I was hunting more for a hobby or a sport, I might feel differently.
Yeah.
You know, but it really is at the end of the day about the meat for me. There is still a sporting element to it. I do still want to get a big buck. But really what I'm doing it for is to feed my family.
Likewise, and when I say we are doing it for different reasons, I mean even more so, like, I've told you this before, any time spent in the woods is not wasted time, even if you don't come home with a deer. Mm-hmm. It is, you know, in a sense, it's therapeutic, and you're always learning something, and just being out in nature, like, that's more of the reason why I'm doing it.
It's funny, I feel like I need therapy lately.
Yeah,
like the woods aren't therapeutic. It's like I need something therapeutic after the woods.
And then even today, so Nate, he shoots an old model 94.
Yep, Winchester
30-30, which is a great deer gun.
Yeah,
but one of your situations is a big field, and you're like, it doesn't have the range for that field.
Yeah.
So I've got this 30-06 that I bought that I was like, Nate, why don't you use that? I've never hunted with it. I've had it for 3 or 4 years now. I've never hunted with it. So we thought, you know, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. So went and bought an expensive box of rounds. I was like, you just got to sight it in. Never really sighted it in.
Yeah. And typically, you know, that's a pretty straightforward process. You get it done in 5-6 rounds, even on a bad day, you know?
Mm-hmm. Even with a brand new scope without a bore sight. Like, you can just shoot close, then back up.
Yep. And we went through an entire $40 box.
Which is 20 rounds.
Yep, and still didn't have it sighted in, and it was like so frustrating.
Well, that came down to being partially my fault, realizing, like, I guess this gun does not have a good scope on it.
Yeah, but it's not your fault. You didn't know that.
I didn't know that. No, I get that, but I'm saying, you know, it's got to come down to the scope. I don't know what else to blame it on.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the first few
We're
shots.
shooting from a bench press and everything. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, if there was human error, it would have been very slim and not frequent. Yep. And this thing just would not group.
Yeah.
And at that point, that comes down to just being an ethical hunter. Like, some guys probably would have been like, well, whatever. It's close. I hit the paper. I'll go try it.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I said to you, that feeling you had while sighting that gun in and not having confidence is the same reason I went and bought a new bow that 1 year. I bought my new bow because I was just like, I need to be confident in my equipment.
Might be the reason I buy a new rifle next year.
Yeah. It probably will be.
Yeah, because that 30-30, it's great, but it's great out to like 150 maybe. Mm-hmm. And that's if it's like really dialed in and with a long range scope. You know, I've got a 6 power. I've got a 1-6.
You have a phenomenal scope.
It's a phenomenal scope. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, you know, to really get a heart shot on a deer, even at 100 yards, it's like it's not quite zoomed in quite enough. Yeah.
So I think with that 30-06, I just need to go get a nice scope on it, and it'll be a great gun. So that's a phenomenal round for a whitetail, a phenomenal round for a long range. It's just, it's lacking because of that scope. Mm-hmm. So, but any more frustrations with that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you were talking about your buddy. You're surprised he didn't hunt. He said he just, you know, goes and gets a steak. You know, if the world was different, if like I felt like there was a little bit more stability in the economy and whatnot, like I might be all right with that, going and getting a cow and filling my freezer with that. But, you know, a big part of this for me, a huge part, probably the fundamental reason why I'm hunting is I want to be self-sufficient.
Right. And
I want to hand down that self-sufficiency to my children.
Right.
You know, so they can be self-sufficient. So they don't have, you know, if the grocery store is the shelves ever go dry, you know, I can still get food.
But,
you know.
So get your perspective into, even though you're having a skunked year so far, you're still learning. And you learn through mistakes. And you've had some mistakes this year that you've learned from already. Definitely.
I think I'm just at that point where there's not a whole lot of lessons I'm learning right now, other than, I mean, the lessons at this point, honestly, it's patience.
Right.
It's trusting God, because at the end of the day, I can do everything right, but it's God that brings a deer to me. Right. Like, they're wild animals. I can do everything right, but it doesn't mean a deer is walking through the woods at that particular time.
There might not be one in there at all, you know, at that point. And that's like what you experienced today. You walked your whole property today and didn't see a single deer, and that blew your mind.
And it's tough that there hasn't been snow, and the way the leaves are laying right now, it's hard to really see the deer paths and stuff like that. I mean, I'm in an area that I'm pretty confident that there's deer, but I'm not seeing them.
And I've told you before, you know, the longer you go into season, the less and less deer you'll see.
Yeah.
And it's tough because you'll be out there in the beginning of bow season, the first few sits, and you'll be like, wow, I saw a lot of deer. This is going to be great. As bow season goes on, it kind of increases a little bit because you start getting into that rut, the pre-rut. You've seen a lot of activity. You'll get into right in the middle of the rut, which is really during bow season here. Tons of activity. And then it just, gun season happens. Opening day is a great opportunity, which you had an unfortunate situation happen then, which you could have lucked out that day. Had that not happened, we talked about that in a previous episode where just some other hunters kind of intercepted you and kind of messed up your hunt. And then it just keeps going downhill after that. Like even with me, where I've been in a completely unpressured area, the only pressure is me and a couple other variables in there, but I'm seeing nothing. I'm seeing absolutely nothing. My cameras are dry where I was getting 50 to 100 photos a night of deer. And now I'm getting 20 a week, maybe. Like, I think I got 3 photos yesterday. I got 1 early this morning, nothing else. And I've got a dozen cell cams in there, So it's like, it doesn't make sense. It's frustrating.
I just had a thought that, this is my 3rd season, but this is actually my first late season that I've hunted. Because the first year I got that doe and just kind of called it quits. Basically, I went out a couple times.
Yeah, but that was also late in the season, I believe. It was late.
It was around Thanksgiving.
So it was in the first week.
It was the week of Thanksgiving.
There's only 22 days, I believe, of rifle season in New York.
Yeah,
and you didn't realize that, too.
Right. Yeah, it snuck up on me quick.
Because
so I just kind of took my time, and then I was like, the season's basically gone. So I didn't really get out too much more that year. And then last year, I had a baby on the way and was working on my house a lot, so I didn't get out a whole lot. And so this is the first time I've hunted late season hard. And, with not growing up around hunters, even my friends didn't really hunt. I don't really have much of a reference point for these kinds of things. So, yeah, like you said, this is maybe more common than maybe I realize. Because I have been thinking, like, oh, man, there's guys that don't hunt as hard as I have. You'd think I'd at least get lucky by now.
Right. And I said that to you too. I said that to you. It was like, it's really coming down to being at the right place at the right time. You're like, well, statistically, shouldn't that have happened by now with how many sits you've done?
Yeah.
And you said you've done well over 100 hours out there.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Well over.
Yeah, right now, I'm hunting 7 days a week and at least 3 hours a day. So that's 21 hours a week.
Right. Right. Mainly evenings.
Mainly evenings. Yeah, I do some mornings, and maybe that could help if I did more mornings.
And you've tried doing the 10 to 2. You've tried doing the evening sits and the morning sits, all of it. And you have had some close encounters. You've had close encounters with big bucks. You've had good encounters. You've let deer pass.
Yep.
At the time, you've let some smaller bucks pass and things like that.
Yep. There's a 4-point that I had right in my crosshairs. I just didn't want to take them. I told myself earlier in the year that I'm not shooting anything smaller than I got last year.
Other than now, does that change now?
I'd still have a hard time shooting a 4-point. I don't think I'd do it.
Even for what if it's the last day of the season and you have nothing?
I don't know. I don't really feel good about shooting a 4-point.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like, what's a 4-point, like 2 years old probably?
You never know, really. I mean, antler size doesn't really dictate exactly.
Right.
It could be a 1.5-year-old. It could be a 2.5-year-old. So, I mean, that deer is a 2.5-year-old. And
it just feels like it just feels like a young guy, like, hey, go on, grow a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a doe first couple weeks of bow season that I let pass. I was still hunting, and she was with a fawn, so I let her go. There was another doe that I came close on, and I drew back, and she had one more step to go, and I would have shot, and then the wind switched right at that moment. Went to her, I saw her lick her nose, and then just run off. And then there were 2 other does that I actually got a shot off in rifle season, and it wasn't until the second time that I realized that my strobe had that had lost 0. Yeah, because this is actually not a great thing. I mean, I learned to test it, but like a lot of scopes, you have to, like yours, you need a tool.
You have
caps. Right. Mine, you can just turn with your hand.
From the outside without touching, without opening anything.
Which is nice as a marksman scope because if there's windage and things like that, you can make adjustments. But it's just something that I know now I need to keep an eye on because it was like 20 clicks off, which is pretty major.
Yeah, I don't know if a scope like that is best for hunting, because
it's a tactical scope. It was never. I had it on an AR-15.
It was before you hunted. You purchased that scope.
Yeah, it's a tactical scope. I mean, it's a 1-6. It's a fighting scope. It's not a hunting scope.
Right.
But it was what I had, so I just like threw it on the 30-30. But I definitely could get a better hunting scope. But it does fine.
Yeah.
It does fine.
So are you thinking next year just a completely new rifle set up for just strictly big game hunting?
We'll see how it goes, but yeah, probably. If I continue to hunt a field, for sure.
Yeah.
Because that spot that I've got field, it makes a lot of sense, but it makes sense to stick with my rifle. It's a fine rifle for the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got the shotgun now. So for people that are, beginners, we get a lot of questions on our podcast of people saying, I do question and answers on the Instagram a lot, and a lot of questions we get is, what would you suggest? How does someone get started in hunting? How does someone just give us advice of like what to do? And like, first of all, as far as firearms go, you need a shotgun, depending on what you're going to go for, right? So small game, you absolutely need a shotgun. That you can't shoot small game with a rifle unless you're shooting a 22. You can shoot rabbits, squirrels, things like that with a 22. You can't shoot waterfowl with a 22. It can only be a shotgun with a steel shot. But you got your shotgun. You don't have a slug barrel for it, right?
No, but I could.
You could. Mm-hmm. So it's, I would say for people starting out, getting a shotgun and getting one with double barrels. Yeah. Like your father-in-law bought a shotgun that he's got a bird barrel for shooting bird shot, and then he switches the barrel and puts a scope on it, can shoot big game with it. But if you get a good shotgun and a good rifle, you're basically set.
Yeah.
For everything.
Yeah, and if you're just getting started, I had a friend of mine just ask me this question the other day because he's starting to get into hunting, and I recommended him to get a shotgun. It's the most versatile. You can do a lot of things with a shotgun, and everything else is kind of specialized. 22 is very specialized. A 30-06 or a 30-30 is fairly specialized.
Yep.
Like you said, you're not going to hunt a duck with a 30-06.
Yeah, no.
But you can hunt with a shotgun. You can hunt squirrel, rabbit, ducks, geese, bear,
It's
deer.
going to be a lot more affordable for somebody starting out if you just need to get one gun.
Yeah, if you get one gun.
Then go with... I would recommend the Remington Model 870 for your go-to gun that is like the most renowned, reliable, pretty fairly priced. I don't know what they go for now. The last one that I got, I think, was $550. I have 3 of them now.
Yeah.
They used to be like $200.
Yeah, and 12 gauge too.
Yeah. So it's a 12 gauge. They've got the Super Mag now, which takes the bigger shells. You can do a 3.5-inch shell.
Nice.
And they come with a plug. So in New York, when you shoot waterfowl, besides in the early season, you're only allowed to hold 3 shells in your gun. So you can put the plug in for that, take the plug out for when you're deer hunting. And so most affordable, about $500, $600 or so, you get your shotgun for small game and then get a barrel with it, which is probably another $100 or so for shooting. And if you want, you can put a scope on that and everything too. And that's the way to go, really. Although shooting big game with a shotgun, you do have a little bit of a disadvantage just as far as range goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's about it, though.
Yeah.
They have great stopping power.
Oh, yeah.
They will smack a big game animal down.
Yep.
Great, but you do have just range. That's the only disadvantage.
Yep.
But if you go on to the next step up, just get a shotgun and keep it solely for your small game with just one barrel, and then just go get some decent rifle. Whether you get a Savage or something like that, and it's not overly expensive, and they're pretty reliable, good rifle, and it's a good place to start.
What do you think the best all-around starter round for a rifle is?
I'm so biased to my 308, man. I really am.
That's funny. I was gonna say 308 though.
My whole life I've just hunted with 308 and 270.
It's easy. They're easy shooting. Mm-hmm. They've got a fair amount of range.
Yeah.
And they're heavy enough that you can still use it like in the woods. It's not going to get completely thrown off if you nick a branch or something.
Elaborate on that a little bit, what you mean by through the woods.
Yeah, so like my 30-30, for instance, I mean, it's a big, heavy round. you can contrast that to a 6.5 Creedmoor, which is like a really small round. And so that small round, if you shoot it in the woods and if it hits some brush or there's
Even
a
just
twig in the way that you
twigs.
don't see, it could affect the trajectory of it and
Right.
throw it off, where a larger, heavier round like a 30-30 is going to be more likely to just cut through that brush or cut through that twig and still stay on its path.
Right. And not only losing its path, they'll also just shatter. A rifle round, if it goes through
Right.
some brush, it'll just completely shatter
Good point.
and turn into essentially a bird shot. And that's why a lot of guys refer to like the shotguns as the bush gun.
Right.
If you're going out there and you with an open sight shotgun with just a big slug, it looks like a big musket ball. The pumpkin ball is what we call them. That's great for you could shoot through a bush with that thing, and it's just going to break the twigs and keep going. You don't have far range with it, but it's a good just drive through everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean 308's really the main rounds I've always used is 308 and 270. I think are the only rounds that I've shot deer with. I've shot with the 375 Contender handgun, but I mean there's the 300 Win Mag, 30-06, 30-30. There's so many rounds that you could use that are fantastic rounds. But I would just say 308 is a good field and brush gun.
Yeah.
And that's what I would definitely go with. I'm a fan of that round big time.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm pretty biased.
Yeah.
So before this podcast started, I posted on the Kanati Instagram page just a quick question and answer. And so we're just going to read through a couple of those. There's some really good ones here. We just kind of touched base on this, but we can do it a little bit more. Where should someone who didn't grow up into hunting start?
Tune into the Kanati Way podcast.
Yeah, I mean you're in the right place. You're definitely in the right place if you want to learn. But I think the best resource is just the internet. There's so many phenomenal YouTube channels out there.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is the Hunting Public. They put out so much information. They're morally, ethically renowned guys that are very successful. So don't let that get to you, because these guys go out and do some crazy things, stalking down big bucks, and just they're good, and they have a lot of success. Where that might be a little misleading, because if you're brand new, I wouldn't recommend just going down and trying to say you see a giant buck and you're just gonna stalk. Go try it, because you're gonna learn. You might be successful, and if you fail, you're gonna learn. But definitely, it's just the internet. It's the best thing. If you don't have someone in your life. We've talked about this a lot. I've had my dad teach me everything, and there's a lot that now I'm teaching my dad, because I dove into this even more, And I mean, you met some old timers in this past week that have been 30 plus years into hunting that say the wind doesn't matter.
Yeah. And they also say they don't see any deer on the hill, and it's like, hey, those things might be connected.
So really, just the best answer to that's got to be just get on the internet.
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yep.
YouTube is huge.
It's a huge resource. I mean, I'm huge on that. If I have any question where I'm trying to learn, I literally just type out that question on YouTube or Google, and you'll always find an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, you're going to find a lot of conflicting answers for things,
Right.
such as anything in life.
Yep.
There's
so then
always.
you just got to take those conflicting answers, try them out, see what works for you, and because where the internet is a good place to start, nothing beats infield experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that can be frustrating, but you just got to stick with it and play it out. And you're in the frustration right now, but just stick with it.
Well, as a new hunter myself, intermediate maybe hunter at this point, when I was starting out, I was very blessed to have a friend like you, where I could call you up, you could come show me hands on how to skin a deer.
In the first blood on your bow buck, you told me you hit it, and I was like, I think you went to the arrow.
Yep.
You went to the arrow on your own because you had a lighted knock.
Yep.
And so you knew that right where that was, and I said, go to the arrow. I'll meet you there. Mm-hmm. And then it was, I could show you how to read the blood.
Yep.
And we, so then you wouldn't bump it or anything like that, but you had a great shot. It didn't go far.
Oh, it was double lung.
Yep. Next one is let's talk about some ice fishing. I think we're going to save ice fishing we're going to have some really cool podcasts this winter.
Yeah, we'll have a podcast right in the ice shanty.
While we're fishing.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be great.
So I've got a big ice shanty. It's the biggest one you can buy. We had 8 guys in that thing last year.
Yeah.
Or maybe that was 2 years ago. I didn't ice fish much last year. But we're going to have some really cool ice fishing
I'm looking forward to it.
podcast. It might even, for a couple months, you might see us every week in the shanty.
It's possible, yeah.
And we'll just, like, whether we're on a lake, we'll probably just be on a local pond where you'll know we're going to have action. And so we sit out there. I've got this, the cooktop that we bring out. We got a heater. We got all these lights in there and everything. And we're just going to be pulling up.
Dude, it's amazing. Like, when I went fishing with you last year, and you just pull a fish up, you process it right there, threw some oil in a pan, and then before you know it, I had a taco.
Yeah, in like 8 minutes. I was like, that was quick.
I'm like, all right, this ain't too bad.
Yeah. Beer stays cold out there on the ice too.
Hey, that's another perk.
So yeah, you guys will definitely see a lot of ice fishing stuff, and we'll talk about when ice fishing season's here. Just trust us. You'll learn a lot about ice fishing then.
Yeah.
Next question is, how to effectively hunt the warm conditions of early October if you can be mobile? That's a really good question. I like that because October's tough.
Yeah.
Early season's very tough. And obviously neither of us were successful with that. I have been in the past. So if you're going to hunt early October, warm seasons, it's going to be pre-rut. Bucks especially are patterned still to their summer pattern. And this is something that people, who aren't into outdoors aren't going to know this, but deer pattern differently as the year goes on. They'll have a summer pattern, they'll have a rut pattern, they'll have a winter pattern that kind of goes back into their summer. And the summer pattern, especially for bucks, mainly all deer, is bed, feed, bed to feed. And that's all they do. They'll bed in the same exact spot, and they'll go feed in the same exact spot. They'll find wherever, crop fields, ag fields, whatever they're feeding on, they'll know where that is, and they'll just go to the same thick bedding area, get up every day, usually twice a day, and then go into that feeding area. So if you're hunting early season, your best bet, absolute best bet, is just to try to intercept that. And you and I both tried to do that this year, and we saw a good amount of deer doing that. And that's when we were, being picky about what we want to shoot.
However, I will say that I think the best way to have a successful early season is to have a lot of work in the preseason, and that's a big lesson I learned this year that I'm going to do differently next year, because I might have done a week of scouting. And it shows. It shows because I was doing scouting. That was honestly, I would have had a lot better season in the early season, but I was hunting 5 properties this year, 200 acres total,
which is hard to scout that many properties.
Right, and I'm scouting them as I'm trying to hunt. So I'm making noise. I'm walking around. It is applying pressure. I'm careful. I walk slow. I try not to make more noise than I have to.
Right.
But that's work that I should have done in the early season, to where on opening day I can just go to a spot and sit, and I know.
I will say though, summer pressure isn't you're not going to hurt it as much as you would peak rut pressure. Deer season pressure is different than summer pressure. If you bump a deer early in the season, it's not going to push them out of there. If you've got a buck that's heavy in rut and you bump him, there's a chance that you're not going to see him again.
It's got to have an effect, though. I mean,
they're not pressured really. Like, that's kind of a contradiction. They're I don't know. I in my opinion, in my experience, deer in the summer, you can get very close to them. I watched my target buck this summer walk right by me, 30 yards, 25, 30 yards, just walked right by me. And I mean, granted, I didn't move at all. I was hidden. Wind was good. I was just like, oh God, I had no idea he was there. I was like, crap, please don't see me, please. And I just stayed silent, and he walked by, and it was awesome. Yeah. Really cool. But they just act different. Like,
but if you're hiding there going, please don't see me, why do you care?
Right. Because I didn't want to take the risk with that.
Right.
I just feel like I've bumped a lot of deer in the early season and just didn't scare them. I bumped my target buck in, mid-October.
Yeah.
That one day, remember?
Yeah.
And he was still there that evening, and he was still there the next day.
Yeah.
He was, he didn't know I was hunting him. Yeah. And I think there's a difference there with deer. I think there's a difference between when they know they're hunted. If they see you up in a tree, I think that's a lot different than if they see you just walking. casually walking.
Right.
Because I was walking at normal speed. I was not tiptoeing. I was not taking my time, being careful and being alert. I let my guard down and I messed up because I probably would have killed him that day if I hadn't.
Well, pressure aside, I'll say too that I spent a lot of time that I could have spent just hunting. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not maybe pressuring the land to a point where I'm affecting it long term, if I do bump a deer, it is one less deer that I can shoot.
Well, let's also elaborate on scouting. Like, I that's a huge point you said, that if you want to be successful in those early warm days of October, put the time in before October to figure their pattern out.
Yeah.
Because you're not, that pattern, bed to feed, doesn't matter if you don't find out what it is.
Yeah.
And, different types of scouting can be you literally getting out in your tree stand and watching. And he says here, if you can be mobile. What I'm going to assume that means is a mobile hunter. For people who don't know what that is like going in, probably either using a saddle or a hang and hunt set, or even hunting from the ground, observing, realizing like, oh, the deer are all moving 80 yards that way. So then the next day getting 80 yards closer, getting to that area where they're moving. So that's you able to be mobile. A great way to scout early season is with cell cams or with trail cams if you can't do the cell cams. And like that's kind of, over the years I've bought, every year I buy a couple more, and now I've got a large collection of them where I can do a lot of scouting.
Yeah.
Without having to be in there pressuring them.
Yep.
And that's a great form to have.
Yeah, that's another big thing I'm gonna get next year. I'm gonna get every month or two. I'm just gonna get another one until next year, so I can start hanging them in the summer.
Like I said, 16 years of hunting, but I haven't had cameras for more than the past 4, I think.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you don't need them. It's a luxury. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can look for, rubs, strapes, droppings, trails, and you can see them live just walking through the woods too if you're quiet, but it is definitely a huge benefit if you have them. But I'm a big proponent of minimalism. I don't want to rely on more things than I have to. I want to be able to just use my senses to to figure it out. And I feel like for a new hunter too, I think it's good to take that slight disadvantage to train your senses, to be able to see droppings, to be able to, just use your own intellect and your own senses to learn these things and to be an effective hunter.
Right.
And then add in these tools later, once you get those skills down. Because if you rely on these tools right from the jump, then you actually might be handicapping yourself. Because like, it's almost like, here's an example. I sometimes intentionally go to the gym without headphones, because I don't ever want to be the guy that turns his car around once I get there because I forgot them.
I've done it a
lot.
It's
like, right. So like that's kind of something that maybe a lot of people can relate with, where it's like, I don't want to be that hunter where it's like, oh, I forgot my grunt call, or oh, I forgot my rangefinder or something. It's like, oh, turn the car around. It's like, I want to be able to, with my eyes, know that that's 35 yards. Right. Not rely on this piece of technology.
That's like today when we were shooting the gun, I walked to you. I set the target up. I saw you ranging, and I was like, don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud. Then I walked to you, and I was like, what is it, about 115? You're like, 115.
It was exactly 115. It was,
And I was like, ugh.
Right. And you don't get those skills if you just rely on that tech from day one.
Right. And I didn't have a rangefinder until I bought my new bow. I never had a rangefinder before that. Everything was just by eye.
And it shows.
And that's probably why.
You looked back, you were like, oh, that's probably about 30 yards, and then you paced the rest, and you were spot on.
Yeah.
You can't
straight down to the exact yard. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. I, to go off of what you said about trail cams might be a little bit of a negative there, and spoil you. This year is the first year that I've ran a ton of them after this buck. And I haven't gotten a photo of him in 2 weeks now. I feel so discouraged of even going in there. I'm still going in, but this week there was 3 or 4 days. I've been doing every morning and evening, if not full day sits. I missed a lot of sits this week because I was like, he's not there. I'm not getting him on camera. He could still very well be in there. That deer could have learned where my cameras are, because every time he walks by him, he looks at them, because they do have a little bit of a noise. I could be educating him on that, or he could be simply just slipping right behind him or in a different area. I've got it pretty covered where it's like, if he's in there, I'm going to get a photo of him. I'm very dramatic about it. Like, I'm overkill for sure. But like what you said, I'm discouraged. If I didn't have cameras at all, and I'm just going off of like, I've seen this deer on hoof 7-8 times now, I know he's in the area, I'd be out. every single day, I'd probably still be full day sitting. But now I'm like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because now I'm like, okay, he's not in there, so I'm just going to give it a rest anyway to keep my scent out so he goes back in. Like, there's pros and cons to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's a good point that you said there, because I've definitely, because of these cameras and not having a photo in 2 weeks, I've been discouraged.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Well, it's like even these hunting apps like Hunt Stand or OnX, you know, they've got the wind direction, and it's typically pretty good. But like today, I always check before I leave because it's close enough that typically when I get there, it's good.
Let me guess. But was it completely opposite today?
It was opposite.
Mine was here too.
So
completely opposite.
If I only relied on that app, I would have sat in that tree stand and completely wasted my time because it would have blown my scent up into the hill. And if I'm not really like paying attention, I'm not really thinking about it. But because I use my senses, I had to change my plan. And that's why I ended up walking through the woods, because I was like, all right, well, I have a unique opportunity because typically my wind is blowing in a certain direction where I can't walk into the woods, where today I can walk in that direction and, you know, I'm good.
I did the same exact thing today, and I thought about you when I was doing that, because I thought about texting. Because, you know, sometimes I'll just randomly send you some tips or something like that, because I know you still are. I mean, you basically got it all down now. But I almost text you saying, hey, don't fully rely on that, because I was walking in today. Wind was supposed to be a south wind, and I was like, why am I just getting blown in the face right now? I was like, this doesn't, which for the way I was going in, that was actually better. But I went and sat in a different set because of that direction.
Yep.
And that's why I always carry that milkweed on me, do the little thing. But
wait, what do you mean milkweed?
I'll get to it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's a good tip.
Yeah. So last one we got here is explain the process of waiting after you hit a deer and they flee. So do you want to start with that? I'm assuming you're gonna see that more with archery. So we'll just assume we're talking archery, though this will relate to both archery and rifle hunting.
Well, I'll talk about archery, and you can talk about rifle.
It's really the same thing.
Okay. Well, the idea is like, so when I got my my bow kill last year, I shot him. He kind of jumped and then he ran off, and I lost sight of him. And so what I did is I just waited for like half hour, maybe even 45 minutes, just to be extra sure. I got down and I checked the arrow for blood and waited for you to get well, you were there basically at that point.
Yeah.
And then we tracked. And the reason that we do that is because, especially with archery, it can take a little while for that animal to fully expire.
Yeah.
And if you get up and start chasing him right away, then he might get startled and run off. And the chances of you recovering that deer at that point are maybe not zero, but definitely a lot less.
Cut it right in half at least. Yeah.
And if you do it twice, you might not recover that deer.
Right.
Where, because I waited, he was 40 yards away.
Often when a deer gets hit by an arrow, it has no idea what happened.
Right.
And so to go off of what you're saying with that, to fill people in that, again, are new to this, when you're archery hunting, Nate just said the steps. Make the shot, assess the shot. That's what's great about those lighted knocks too. You can really see where you hit the deer.
Yeah.
A lot better. And that's what I love now about filming all my hunts. I can go back and look at that footage and really get an idea of where the shot placement was. And so first thing is shot placement, I would say. Second thing is, what was the body language and the reaction of that deer when you hit it? And again, it goes for both archery and firearms, but this is mainly archery. Did that deer mule kick? Did it kick its back legs? Did it just sink its back down, which would, signify a gut shot? If its back legs kicking up in the air, shows a heart shot. If it just completely jumps in the air, that's often a lung shot. So
which that's what mine did.
Yeah.
And it was a double lung.
Just sprung in the air.
Yep.
And that usually signifies.
Because I was very inexperienced at the time, I was worried that I missed it, because I was like, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he jumped right up in the air and then just kind of trotted off, and he was like, did I even hit him?
Yep. So it's cool. Mule kick, heart.
Yeah.
When they kind of kneel down, gut. Well, just think about yourself getting punched in the gut. Like you're going to be like, ugh. Yep. Same thing. And then spring in the air, usually a lung shot. And then if you shoot them in the spine, they don't go anywhere. They just kind of fall. And that's a tough thing to see. I hate that. It's happened to me multiple times. So arrow placement, the deer's reaction to getting hit, and then the next step is wait, no matter what. If you don't see the deer fall, you need to wait. And I always say minimum of 30 minutes. Yeah. If you know that it was a gut shot, you don't know how far away it ran, you should wait as long as you possibly can. And then your next step is go find the arrow. Mm-hmm. And then that's why I told you when you called me that day, you're like, I got it. I see the arrow. And I was like, well, just give it a little bit of time before you even go to the arrow, because I was thinking those crunching of the leaves, if he's right there nearby, he could run off. Yeah. But then you went and got the arrow. And then the next thing that we learned is to read the arrow. Yep. So if you want to go on that, you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. There's different indicators, things that you'll see on the arrow. You could probably help me out with this a little bit, but
bubbles in the blood.
Bubbles in the blood is going to be a lung. You might even see some lung matter, some pink lung matter. So that's what I saw. Yep.
If it's a gut shot.
See, that's the only one that I've ever got. So I'll just let you continue.
So
to go
a gut shot, you're going to see stomach matter on it. It'll smell very, very bad. Mm-hmm. There won't be much blood on it.
Might even have some like green or brown on it.
And again, we're only talking about if you got a full pass through. The arrow sometimes stays in the animal.
Right. True.
So this is talking about if you have a full pass through and you see your arrow in the ground. Yep. So if with a gut shot, you'll see literally grass on it, guts on it, and you smell it, and it's rancid. It's not good. But like you said, lung shot, there's literally bubbles in the blood because of the oxygen. Yep. A heart shot is usually just bright blood covered. The whole thing will just be blood, no bubbles. Sometimes you'll get a gut shot that maybe exited through a lung, and you'll be able to see that there's some bubbles and stuff in it. Liver is just dark blood. Very, very dark blood is the liver. And you can judge now based off the body language, shot placement, reaction, and now arrow, how long you need to give it. If you've got a heart shot, you're pretty good to go start looking for your deer right then and there, especially if you've waited your 30 minutes. Good to go. Yeah. If you've got what you think is a double lung, your half hour is probably good. I would still say, just for, good luck, keepsake, whatever, give it another half hour. Get amped up, make yourself excited a little bit. You probably got a deer dead close by, but just there's no harm in waiting with that. You're not going to lose anything by waiting, especially where we're from. I mean, you do have to think about temperatures and stuff,
especially early season.
Then you do have to think a little bit about temperatures. Yeah. But an hour after shot is you're not gonna waste any meat from that. So now let's say you've got a liver. They say you want to give it 4 to 6 hours. It's going to take them a while to fully die from that. And then gut. There's been gut shots on deer that I've been on the track for that we gave it 16 hours before we ever went and looked for it. This hunter shot the deer, saw the reaction, knew it was gut. The deer walked off of the food plot. It was a field, actually. Just walked off of a field, went into the hedgerow, bed down, watched him bed down. And he waited till it got dark, and he got down from his stand, snuck out. We didn't go back in until the next day. Went to that spot, deer got up and ran. And they say with a gut shot, if you bump that deer from a gut shot, you will probably never find it. Yeah. You can, but the odds, like you said, are so far down. Yeah. And we tracked that deer probably 3 miles, never found it. I ended up finding it a month later during rifle season. And I just found its skull. I found its skeleton, and I was able to get the horns to the hunter, and he tagged it and stuff still. And obviously he didn't get any meat from it. And that's, no pun intended, that's gut wrenching. Like that's horrible. That sucks. Yeah.
Train.
He's a phenomenal hunter. It happens.
Things happen. Mm-hmm. Things happen a lot more when you don't train.
He does though.
No, I'm not saying anything about this guy. Okay. I'm just saying for this is like for new hunters, Q&A. You gotta train.
And he didn't,
because the more you train, the less likely those things will happen. Things happen always, but you minimize that greatly.
What I respect a lot about him too with that situation, That was like the third day of bow season. So it was October 3rd or something like that. And he was like, he knew that buck was dead, even though he didn't get a chance to harvest it and tag it and get the meat. He was like, I know that buck's dead. That's my buck. I don't have a tag now for a buck. Even though he had a tag and he didn't have a deer for it, he's like, I know that I took one out of the herd, and that's not a lot of guys would do that.
Yeah,
that's really huge.
Respect.
Yeah, yeah, and like he was, opening day that year. That was 2020. I was down in this, I call it Tornado Valley. Down in that really big ravine that got hit with a tornado.
Yep.
And I find it. I had a run in with another hunter that I didn't know was going to be in there. So I was like, okay, listen, you go to the spot. I'm going to go somewhere that I actually have never been before. Thickest stuff you could possibly go through. I'm glad that happened, because that's how I found that deer. And I found a phenomenal place to sit. And I sent him a picture, and I was like, found your buck. And he jumped right out of his tree stand, met me at my truck. I was more excited that I found his buck and was able to meet him at my truck and give him his horns than him and I getting a deer that morning. It was awesome. It was really, really cool. But that's basically why you wait after. And so to quickly touch on with a gun, same thing. You don't have the arrow to assess, but with a gun you can quickly read the reaction of the deer. They're gonna have the same reaction: mule kick, drop, or spring up. A lot of times with a gun you're gonna see the deer pile if you have a good shot, because there's a little bit more damage done with a firearm. But again, like your first doe, you didn't see it fall, and that worried you a lot.
Yeah, that was my first ever deer. I was surprised. My expectation was that I shoot and it falls. I didn't think that any deer, you shot them anywhere, would just run away.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, that was really odd to me. I was like, oh no, what I do wrong? But it was it heart? I know it was both lungs.
I think it was just a double lung. I think the heart.
I think I got her heart. Yeah.
Oh, you think you did get the heart?
No, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Double lung.
Yeah. So, yeah, but she just ran off. She didn't go far, but
right.
Lost sight of her.
And with that, we basically went to where you shot. We found really good blood, and we were able to read the blood trail. And that's something I think I passed. I didn't talk about that with with deer, with archery, I mean. So just real quick backtrack. After you're assessing that arrow, the next thing to do is, when you give it time and decide you're going to go start tracking it, is now get on the blood trail and judge that blood trail. If you're just seeing pools of blood, keep on going. You're going, like, your deer's going to be down. But a lot of times that pool of blood will start turning into drops, and even less and even less. And before you know it, you run out of blood. If something like that happens, a lot of times you got to back out and say, okay, this deer might not be dead.
Yeah. And you might be surprised. I was surprised at how little blood could be on a very catastrophic shot. Like my bow buck.
We lost blood for a minute.
Initially, it was tough. It was just drop, and it wasn't until we got close to where he died that there started to be big pools of blood. We saw it on trees where he was like hitting off of trees before he fell down, and there was big splashes of blood. But initially, it was just like there might be 10 yards in between drops. Yeah,
what we started doing, I think it was even further at one point, and we said, okay, let's just go in the direction that we know he's going. And try to find blood again, and then we found blood again, and we found a lot. Yeah, and that's because clots. So like pretty quickly, their wounds will start clotting up, and that's a huge disadvantage to those fixed blades. They don't have as big of a cut,
right?
And so you won't get as much blood. And that's something that rage, though, like what I shoot, the mechanicals, like the blood trails are significant.
Yeah,
but with a gun too. Now that we've read the deer and decided how long we need to wait on that blood trail, you can still see the blood, and like there'll be bubbles in the blood on the ground, and you'll be able to judge how long you should wait to go after the deer. But to sum that question up, the reason you wait is just so you don't push the deer further, because like you said in the beginning, if you push a deer that's not quite dead yet, your odds of finding it go very, very far down. Yep. Your odds of pushing it off of your property where you have the rights to hunt, that's a horrible situation, because you might push it on someone's property that does not allow you to go in and get it. We talked about that on the last podcast as well. But that's basically it. So anything else you want to really touch base on?
Not off the top of my head. No.
So we're just going to, what's your plans for this coming week? Because right now we've got, I believe, 7 days left.
Yep.
7 days of rifle.
Right.
And then New York has our late season, which is back to bow.
Yep.
Or muzzleloader.
Mm-hmm.
And then that ends, I believe, on like the 18th or something, 18th or 19th of December.
Something like that.
And then we have a new season this year in New York for holiday hunt, they're calling it, where you can hunt from the 26th until the 1st.
I thought it was longer than the 1st.
Nope, 26th to January 1st.
So January 1st is the last day you can deer hunt, period?
Mm-hmm.
I swore it was longer than that.
Nope.
Okay.
We're running out of time. Out of time. But it's cool because we've never had this holiday hunt before. I'm excited to give it a go because I've never experienced what do deer do that time of the month, that time of the year. I've
Pull
never hunted.
Santa's sleigh mostly.
Yeah, you're probably right with that. But they, I like the thought of it because the DEC putting it on was trying to give people that are traveling home for the holidays an opportunity to hunt with their family, make new traditions, which I think is great. A lot of families have a tradition of hunting Thanksgiving together. So that'll be cool to see. And, but yeah, what's your plan coming forward this week?
Just hunt as much as I can afford, you know.
Anything different?
If more mornings.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to go every morning, depending on how my work schedule is. Maybe do a couple full days. I'm hoping for some snow.
None.
But, yeah.
Oh, Friday.
Yeah, is that in the forecast now?
A little bit on Friday, but we've got a warm week. 40s and 50s, 55.
Yeah. And I've got a out of town job next Saturday, so Friday's the last day for me. So
it says a little bit of snow on Friday. I can't read exactly when, but that's all right. You might have
Still
a late
got
season.
6 tags. Let's see if I can fill them.
Maybe Sam will let you borrow his musket.
That'd be cool.
For the end.
Yeah.
For the next week. Yeah, dude, I got 7 tags. I'm at the point now where I'm like, I've been chasing this ghost of a buck. I might need to go fill some tags.
I think you oughta.
Yeah. My plan really is I might goose hunt this week. I know I said that in the last podcast. I still haven't done it, but they're still in that field every morning and evening. So maybe we'll go on a goose hunt. Maybe we'll do a goose blind podcast.
I probably won't goose hunt this week.
No? You just full deer?
I got to get deer, man.
Full deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, goose season goes later, so
yeah,
they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
They're coming through. We saw a ton of ducks today, too.
Yes, we did.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a lot in the mornings flying here. Let me check my other account real quick and just see if anyone said anything on there because I posted it on both of them. I don't think there's any questions. No, there's not. So, yeah, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and I think that I will do that most times now before we podcast. I think I'll post a Q&A because, you know, though we're doing this, it's something we've always wanted to do. We're really making this podcast for our listeners. So I think it'd be great to do that. Keep asking questions or giving people the opportunity to ask us questions.
Yeah.
I like that. So we'll probably do that, if not every time, moving forward. And we're going to try to have another guest next week. And I'm not sure what we'll talk about, but maybe if you guys want to post in the comments again what you want to hear us talk about. We love when you guys comment. Subscribe to the channel. We had some really awesome comments on a lot of our other videos. You guys seem to be giving us some great feedback, so we really, really appreciate that. And I think that's about it for this episode.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, have a good one. Thanks for watching.